thing I've noticed at our church over the last number of weeks or maybe months is an increased interest in the question of vision, the question of purpose. Why are we here? Vision was a big theme last week at the lively a budget meeting full of excellent questions and wonderings and suggestions. It's been a big theme as we've been recruiting for vestry for our board of directors. It's a big theme as we get ready for today's annual general meeting. What is our purpose as church? That's a big question, and maybe it's a question that brings some anxiety with it. I think vision-driven questions always have an element of anxiety to them, don't they? Why are we here? What should we do? Is this the college that I should go to? Should I take this job? Should I marry this person? Exciting questions and fingernail-biting questions at the same time. So I'd like to spend a little time wondering about that exciting and anxious question. Why grace? Why Grace Memorial? Who are we, and what might we be called to do? And in order to wonder about a few answers to that question, I'd like to ask for Jesus' advice. That feels like where we need to start, this being Christ's church. Grace is not a not-for-profit that is informed by faith, although not-for-profits are excellent. We're not a service organization, although service is a key part of discipleship. That's not who we are. We are not a club that exists primarily or exclusively to serve the needs of people who pay dues to the club. I've sometimes wondered, actually, if the church should have a sign out front of it, similar to the one that used to be in front of a bar in my hometown that said, non-members only. We exist to follow Jesus, to say yes to Christ, to be the body of Christ, to be Jesus' hands and feet and voice in a hurting world. And in order to wonder about what that might look like, to get some specificity, let's look at our gospel reading today. Thanks be to God for the lectionary, for the cycle of readings that we follow Sunday after Sunday across the year. Evidently, the Holy Spirit knew today was annual general meeting Sunday because we got the Beatitudes this morning, the series of blessed are statements from Jesus, part of a broader speech which Leonard Cohen called the staggering account of the Sermon on the Mount, which I don't pretend to understand at all. And the Beatitudes are maybe as close as Jesus comes to giving us a vision statement. There are other times when he tells the disciples what to do, particularly late in his life. He gives them these instructions or marching orders. But this would be up there, the Beatitudes, these series of blesseds in terms of vision. So what might Jesus' vision be, and how might that shape us at Grace a month into and heading deeper into 2023? Well, I've got three possible answers to that question this morning. This is not an exhaustive list. The nature of the Beatitudes is they are wild and free and holy. There's always more going on in them than you expect. They're always surprising. There's always something new. You could wrestle with the Beatitudes for the rest of your life. It's three wonderings for this morning. I'm wondering about blessing those who mourn. I'm wondering about blessing the peacemakers, and I'm wondering about blessing the pure in heart. If those three blessings, mourn, peacemakers, and pure in heart, might be part of our vision as church. Let's spend a little time with each of them. So to begin, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall receive comfort. Is it possible that Grace is called to be a place that blesses people who mourn? This feels like an urgent question. It feels like an urgent question for me personally. I am in a time of active mourning at the moment in the aftermath of my father's death and my mother's overlapping health crisis. And it feels like an urgent question maybe for society more broadly. A lot of us are holding grief right now over the events of the last, I don't know when you want to start counting, 3 years, maybe longer ago. There's a big societal loss, trauma, hardship that we are carrying into a moment like this one. And this is a culture that I want to suggest is incompetent around grief, does not know what to do with grief or loss. We want these things to go away as quickly as possible. We want to achieve closure on them as quickly as possible. Sometimes while bodies are not even cold yet, we're talking about closure. If you hang out with religious people and you are in dealing with grief, you may hear some turns of phrase, some hallmark theology in response to grief and loss. So I guess God needed another angel. He's in a better place. God doesn't give you more than you can handle. You may have heard sayings such as these, monumentally unhelpful theology. They may be helpful to the person who speaks them. It's possible that that's the case, but they are incredibly unhelpful to the person who hears them. They might even be destructive. Because what do you do with statements like that if you reckon that actually you did need the person whom you loved more than God needed another angel? If you would like the person whom you love to be with you more than you would like them to be in a better place? If you are dealing with more than you can handle? What do you do with stuff like that? And something I'm personally immensely grateful for is that has not been what I've experienced at all here at Grace. This is a community that has responded incredibly skillfully to this time of grief for me. I was particularly grateful for a couple cards. I remember one, well, a lot of cards came in. I remember one that said, we can say it was his time, that he got to be old, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You've got your grief anyway. It doesn't make it any better. And I loved receiving a card that said, what I am looking for is a blessing not in disguise. Oh, amen. So thank you for that. Thank you for all the ways that you've just showed up in grief. What if Grace is called to be a community that blesses those who mourn? What if this is a community where we show up in grief, in loss, in hardship, and injustice, and don't have a need to make it right? What if this is an okay place to show up when you're hurting? A thing I've noticed in our culture is that when someone starts crying in front of another person, the person who is weeping within seconds of crying will say a word. Do you know what the word is? Oh, yes, you do. Yes, that is the word. But 3 seconds, 5 seconds into the tears, they will say sorry. Why are we apologizing? Why are we apologizing for weeping in front of another person? What if church could be a place where it was okay to cry? What if church could be a place it was okay to be wounded or lost or searching? What if this was a place you brought these things and you found not hallmark theology, not a need for closure, not a need to put things right, but just the blessing of other people being there with you in your grief, in your, John, God bless you, your apprenticeship with grief. So blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the peacemakers. What if Grace is called to be a place where we bless peacemakers and where we nurture peacemakers? And peacemaking is something that takes place on a big scale, on a global scale. I think of Dick Toll's work and Joe Bronson's work and other folks' work in the Holy Land. I think about the work this community is doing to partner with Trinity Cathedral in Monrovia, Liberia, to dig a well and get clean water for the cathedral and its neighbors, something we take for granted in Portland, that you can turn on the tap and have clean water coming out. I think of the amazing work multiple folks did on the campaign for sensible gun reform that took place as part of the last election. Any number of examples. Grace has a real heart for this kind of peacemaking. But I also think about peacemaking on a much smaller scale, which is the peacemaking that takes place between one person and another. The reconciliation and connection and holy argument and healing argument that can take place between two people. This is hard work sometimes, but it can be connective and important and freeing work if we allow it to be. I came out of a very emotionally restrained family of origin and a incredibly conflict avoidant family of origin. My late dad in particular would move heaven and earth not to have an argument, and it didn't always serve him well. One of the gifts of adulthood for me has been realizing that peacemaking can flow out of conflict, that going directly into an argument rather than retreating from it can actually be healing and generate love and joy and understanding. I had back when I was a stagehand, I had a screaming match with a colleague one time. I've had very few screaming matches in my life. It's not the natural waters that I swim in. But we were both like punchy enough after some 12-hour day, and there'd been some mistake, and it was his fault, and it was my fault, and we had this big shouting match, and afterwards understood one another a lot better. It was a real surprise for me that something like that, rather than being awful, could be healing. And I suspect the reason is we were making a choice to talk to one another rather than talking about one another. That's something I think we're pretty good at Grace, talking to one another rather than about one another, listening, doing the hard work of sharing the truth and telling the truth, and being willing to learn and to be transformed. There's peacemaking that happens in that. Maybe that's something we are called to, peacemaking on a small scale, on a neighborhood scale, and a global scale. Blessed are the peacemakers. And last of all, and of course, this is not an exhaustive list. It's just all I've got for you this morning. Blessed are the pure in heart. Now, pure is a bit of a loaded word, isn't it? It's a bit like freedom. It's a word that has sort of one meaning in the dictionary and a loaded meaning in our wider culture. When you talk about freedom, you tend to, I think anyway, of pickup trucks with massive flags flowing out the back, and that may not be your cup of tea. And similarly, pure in our culture tends to evoke thoughts of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I somehow ended up on the mailing list of a incredible organization called the Pure Life Alliance, and it's sort of like getting a short horror novel in the mail once a month. They're a Christian organization, and their priorities are absolutely extraordinary. If you were to try to reconstruct the gospel based on the mailings of the Pure Alliance, what you would deduce is the very most important thing to Jesus is sexual ethics. Basically, Jesus rarely talked about anything else other than sex. And I'll show you the letter sometime. It's something else. I don't think that is what pure of heart is at all. I think rather to be pure of heart is to have this experience that is absolutely holy in nature. It is absolutely joyous in nature. It's absolutely full of possibility and creativity in nature. It's absolutely free in nature. These are experiences of what the late researcher Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi would call flow experiences, where time is moving much slower or much faster, where there's this complete focus, where there is this joy that you're discovering. These are pure experiences. And I want to suggest that Grace is a place that is called to nurture those pure of heart experiences and does nurture those pure of heart experiences. Consider Art Camp, where hundreds and hundreds of children come every summer, and young people as counselors, and discover that they are artists and singers and actors and creators. They discover community, they discover joy. Art Camp is absolutely an expression of the gospel. Now, Christ Institute is a secular organization. It doesn't use the language of the gospel in describing what it does, but what is taking place at Art Camp is absolutely congruent with what Jesus teaches us. Jesus is in the beauty business, the community business, the creativity business, the being fully alive business, all the things we find at Art Camp. Something similar is happening at Fame. If you ever have the privilege of being here during the week and seeing the joy in the hallway, the community that takes place in the hallway among folks who are likewise discovering their creativity, something similar is taking place in 12-step groups, maybe even on Sunday morning when there is a particularly sublime moment from the choir, or in prayer, or in connecting with a friend, or still something else. These are pure in heart moments. Blessed are the pure in heart. So three possibilities for the vision of this parish, for the reason that we might exist. We're here to bless those who mourn. We're here to bless the peacemakers. We're here to bless the pure in heart. There's still more things, of course. And I want to leave you with some good news, with some signs of life about this work. I want to suggest, of course, we've got room to improve. Of course, there's more we can do, but we're doing well at saying yes to these callings. We're going to go to the annual report after this service, and you're going to see all of the things reflected in the annual meeting booklet that are taking place at Grace that this community is doing. I speak to lots of priests in lots of different contexts, and there are many priests who are serving communities with folks who are waiting passively for the church to get better. Well, they're not waiting entirely passively, because they're complaining very loudly, but they are not acting to make the church better. And that is not what is happening at Grace. If you look at the work of the Buildings and Grounds Committee, we gathered that committee a few weeks ago, and Nancy Entrican invited us to start listing off the things that committee had done in the past year, and the list just kept going and going and going. It's remarkable what members of this community are doing. Similar things are happening within the Finance Committee, within the Security Committee, within the soon-to-be formed Outreach Committee. We're going to see similar work. There's just examples, one after another, that we could give of places where this community is taking leadership. Similarly, I think it was the Sunday before last, I met not one but two newcomers who were here because they had been invited by a friend. That is actually, the research is very clear on this. This is how folks get to church, is being invited by people in their network. It beats banners and postcards and anything else. So thank you, dare I use this word in an Episcopal context, thank you for your evangelism on behalf of Grace. These are signs of life, these are good news, and we could point at still more, and we will point at still more in the annual meeting. It's wonderful to wonder with you about the vision for this beloved community, this place that I love and that I think many of you love as well, that we call Grace Memorial. Wonderful to have the opportunity to bless the mourning, bless the peacemakers, bless the pure in heart. So thanks be to God for that. Thanks be to God for the opportunity to follow Jesus. Thanks be to God for you, for our neighbor. Thanks be to God for the opportunity to follow Christ.